This is Gene Mantra Stilling. Welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 423, originally aired March 12, 2011, re-recorded and remastered for January 20th, 2020. Hi everyone, I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today we are going to talk about the difference between fix and transform. If you have spent any time listening to my work or reading any of the stuff that I write, you know that I'm a stickler when it comes to paying attention to the vocabulary that our clients use. And the reason that that is the case is the words that we use to describe our circumstance are the words that create the way that we emotionally respond to something. And so it's really important that we're paying attention to the words that are being used, because sometimes the words we use aren't describing the circumstance accurately, but that's the way we're going to respond is based on how we do it. This is a bit of a recording that I did with one of my clients a number of years ago. You can hear a furlough conversation in podcast 55. Because that is the case, the audio is just a little wonky. It wasn't recorded in a normal setting where I was doing an interview for a podcast. And so it sounds a little hollow and echoey, but the content that is in here is really, really good. So here is my reflection on the difference between the words fix and transform and how they impact the healing process. Today in the podcast, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about words. And there's a whole series on the site on words that I think the words that we use are really, really important, because if we describe things inaccurately, we put ourselves into a position where we're going to create more problems than actually exist. A really kind of simplified version of that is when a friend says, everybody at work hates me. And you ask the question, really, does everybody actually hate you? And they go, well, no, it's actually only Susie and Joe and Frank. And otherwise, everybody else I get along with fine. Now, you can see the way that we would walk into a workplace differently when we recognize we have a problem with 3 people or a problem with everyone. So those words become really, really important. So I'd encourage you up above the audio here, click on the link where it says categories, click on words and see all of those past articles where we talk about this stuff. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the difference between fix and transform. And this little snippet of conversation came from the tail end of podcast 55. In podcast 55, I had a conversation with my friend Sue about cravings and savoring food and all sorts of good stuff. You should go back and listen to it. But there was this little extra piece that we talked about at the end that didn't make sense in there. So I pulled it out. We're just going to talk about those two right now. It's just a short little audio. You'll really enjoy it. The other thing is, if you want to check out a transcript of this, if you look down below the little player here in the website, you're going to see where you can download a PDF of it, or you'll actually see the whole thing printed out below. So you can just see it right here in the web page, because some people really enjoy going back and reading it. So I hope you enjoy this quick little snippet as we look at the difference between fix and transform. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
I would ask you to kind of just repeat again, because we did talk about it, but I thought it was really profound, was the fix versus transformation.
Yes, it's so often that we talk about, I need to fix something. Well, anything that we fix, we're talking about this sense of brokenness, and that becomes a state that we're in that can have a lot of negative charge around it. And I know that we can get way wrapped up in words, but the first time this was pointed out to me was by my buddy Dan Cleary. I sent something had come up. We were supposed to do an interview, and I sent him a note saying, I'm sorry. And he said, don't say that you're sorry. That's a pretty profound statement to say that you're sorry, because it's not an apology. It's a statement of the type of thing that I am. Oh, that poor sorry Gene. And being able to recognize, I apologize for what happened, and I want to make sure it doesn't happen again is really different than saying I'm sorry. And so when we look at the work we need to do, when we start talking about these things we need to fix about ourselves, or these things that we need to fix about our environment or the world, it automatically implies something's broken. And things aren't necessarily broken. They might not be functioning optimally, and they might not be functioning in a way that's healthy and beneficial in the short and long term. But everything we do is functional. It just might not be achieving the function we want. And so I found it more useful in my own work, to think in terms of transformation. I want to transform this from the way it's functioning now to a way of functioning that's healthier in the short and long term. And so it makes the approach for me doing work easier. It helps me shape my mind so I'm approaching it with a better attitude to ensure that I'm doing better work for myself.
It also sounds more open-ended, where it's just fixed. Almost sounds like you have something in mind that you want it to be, where transformation, it's almost like you're allowing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And any time we're thinking in terms of fix or broken, we immediately make problems digital. And by digital, I mean on or off. It's there or it's not. And for some things, it's not on or off. It's not that I don't feel pain and I do feel pain. There's gradations of pain, and those gradations of pain impact the way I interact in the world. That if I have pain that's an 8 and I move the pain to a 6 and my goal is to get rid of the pain, I failed because I was hurt and I'm no longer not hurt. Like, that's not what I'm getting to. But moving from, a 9 to a 6 might allow me to go out of the house for 2 hours that I couldn't do before because I now have more mobility. And that's a real success. Yes, I still feel pain, but I'm able to do things I couldn't do before. And I'm moving away from this digital sense of one way or another. And transformation helps us to move to a place to understand that they're grades of things. They're not, I have them or I don't. Because lots of things that I want to improve in my life, I might not ever have it perfect. And if I'm only satisfied with perfect, then I'm never going to be satisfied.
Yeah, wow. That kind of goes along with your this or something better, too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. That's the other part of it, is that when we make it digital, we limit our possibilities, and we could actually have something better than what we think fixed is. I hope you found that conversation useful. If you click on the link in the show notes for words, you will hear a number of conversations and lots of writings where I break down different words that my clients use all the time when describing their circumstance and what I think as a practitioner when I hear those words, so that we can move someone to a resource state or transformation that's most useful for them as we change the vocabulary that we use. If you know someone in your life who would find this sort of conversation useful, please be our ambassador, pass it along. Don't spam your inbox, but if there are 2 or 3 friends that you know who would enjoy this, I would really appreciate it if you would be our ambassador. The easiest and fastest way for people to find new resources that are useful is from a recommendation of a friend or a loved one, and I'd really appreciate that if you'd pass it along. If you haven't done so already, you can subscribe to the podcast, and remember, in podcasting parlance, subscribe is always free everywhere you find audio: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify. If you're listening to it on a device where there's audio coming out of it, you can find the Tapping Q&A podcast there. Just search Tapping Q&A wherever you are. If you have a question or a comment, I can always be reached, Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Montrestelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Montrestelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Montrestelli or Tapping Q&A.